All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, based on where you are. I am Dr. Eunice Menja, and I want to welcome you back after the long strike by the lecturers. And I'm glad that you're back and ready to move forward. And I'm going to do this lecture because I want you to be very attentive. This is to support and prepare you for a very major project. So this is very foundational. And what this lecture covers is going to really help you and anchor you, especially when it comes to the ethics that you need. So that's why I titled ACA, and I'm gonna explain to you what ACA is, if have not already introduced it in this solar scavenger. I want you to be fully attentive. Get your notebook ready. Be fully present, even though this is a recorded lecture. So be ready to take your notes, and so because this is going to really impact your major. Most of your grade points are going to come from this project. So I want you to be very attentive when it comes to just paying attention to what you're supposed to do. So as I said, I am Dr. Eunice, and I am a marriage and family therapist. I am a candidate, so that's why it's called LMFT. And I think I've already told you what a candidate is. So it's kind of like a resident doctor in America. So when you become licensed, you have to work under supervision for amount of 2 years before you can be independently licensed. So that's what I'm doing right now. As I teach you this course, I am a therapist and I love my job and I love sitting down with my clients. So I will share with you some of my skills and maybe some of the knowledge that I have learned throughout the years that I have done this work. All right, let's move to the next. So part of this lecture, I really want to walk you through the core ethical principles that anchor in us in the counseling profession. And this is mainly American, that's why it's called American Code of Ethics. But I do believe that American Code of Ethics has really, I want to say, guided a lot of therapists all over the world. Although the American Code of Ethics organizes standards by domains, which you are seeing on the screen of practice, these foundational principles operate underneath every decision we make. So, clinical, administrative, supervisory, and even relational. Understanding how these principles connect gives you, as a clinician, whether you become an occupational therapist, that you become a marriage family therapist, or even a doctor, it's going to give you the principles that are coherent, ethical compass, kind of like your guide. It's not just a list of isolated rules that you have to follow. So as we move through them, I want you to begin to think about how do these important principles impact the care or the services that you provide to your clients. So let's start from the first one. And these core principles are very self-explanatory, so you don't really have to kind of remember too much. It's very likely that these core principles will be tested in your final exam, and I will explain how that looks like. Usually I give a multiple choice exam, and it's usually 30 minutes. I mean, not 30 minutes, 30 points. So you have to gain all the other points in your project. So let's start with autonomy. This says respect the client's rights to self-determination. So what is honoring your client's self-determination? So when we talk about autonomy, we start with autonomy because it really establishes the client as the primary decision maker when it comes to the services they're going to provide, their own life, and even the therapeutic process that we are going to use when we are counseling them, or when we are advising them, or when we are mentoring them. So the ACA, American Code of Ethics, really emphasizes the respect for client dignity, giving them the freedom to choose, and also to make informed consent, because we want to make sure that our clients are aware of the choices they're making and what the treatment really involves. Sometimes you might find out that you go to a doctor and they just tell you what you're supposed to do, or you might go to a therapist that they just tell you what you're supposed to do, but really this is why we're talking about autonomy, because it is very easy to tell somebody, oh, you go love your partner and you're going to stop fighting, or you go eat this kind of food and you're going to stop getting sick. So when you give the client the autonomy, we provide the information that is really important, and it is transparent to them so that they can make their informed decisions. So you can give a client a suggestion, like tell them, these are some of the techniques that you could use, and we have talked about the counseling techniques. These are some of the coping mechanisms, and you are very transparent. You have to be very clear, using the correct language that they understand so that they can make informed decisions based on the information that you're giving them and based on the reason why they came to see you. So we have to avoid imposing our personal values. And we've also talked about this in the previous lectures, whereby, if you are a Christian, you don't try to tell your client, oh, you're a Muslim, you need to convert because Christianity is the only way to healing. No, we have to make sure that we do not or we avoid imposing our personal values on our clients or our patients. So we support clients' capacity to choose, even when the choices are very different from what we prefer. So somebody might say, I want a prayer, or I want to say my rosary when I come to counseling, or I want to pray before I take medication. That has nothing to do with what you believe, because that's what they choose, and that's what you're talking about. Giving them the autonomy to really choose what is best for them and based on their customs or their beliefs. So we do make sure that you also ensure consent is a process, not a one-time signature, because sometimes, even as a therapist, we have this tendency of, if they signed the consent the first time we met them for assessment, but throughout the time that they're coming for other sessions or the consecutive sessions, we are not going to remind them about the consent, or their rights and their responsibilities and their choices. We have to make sure that it's not just the signature that we collect at the beginning of the assessment, it is their affirmation. They really affirm that this is what they want to do, and they continue to do that because they have the autonomy to choose. So the autonomy really sets the tone for counseling to become a collaborative relationship between you and your client. You are not the dictator, you're not the authoritarian, you are being collaborative, if that makes sense. So we're going to talk about the next principle, which is beneficence. People say these words in very different ways, and the way I say it is beneficence, because as a Kenyan, I know that we talk about beneficiary. That's what we talk about, beneficiary. You can tell I'm a Kikuyu. Beneficiary, it's from the word beneficiary. Promote well-being and positive growth. So beneficence is about promoting the client's well-being. It is not our well-being. It is not how much money we're going to make from our client. it's not about how good I'm gonna feel after I treat somebody. It is really promoting their well-being and their well-being alone. So once autonomy has been established, beneficence is going to answer a very critical question. So how do we actively promote the client's welfare while we respect their freedom? So these two are going to go hand in hand. So as far as their growth is concerned, as far as their well-being is concerned, is what makes you feel like you can move forward? What makes you feel like you can grow? And those are the type of questions we are going to continuously ask our clients as we do the counseling. So you're going to use evidence-based or well-supported methods when you try to help a client. It's not anything, or it's not our beliefs, it's not what we have heard before, it's not about anything. It's really what is supported by research to be known to work for those particular issues that your client brought to to the therapy room or to the treatment room. So beneficence requires that we take clinically appropriate actions that only support growth, and they also keep your clients safe, as well as promoting their mental health, because that's mostly what brings our clients into counseling. So, for example, like me, I work with clients that have very complicated mental health issues. It could be they have diagnoses for certain disorders. It could be depression. It could be anxiety. So when they come to me, at the by the end of the day, it is how are they going to benefit from the counseling, from the therapy that I'm giving them, from the treatment plan that I am giving from the beginning. When we are doing the autonomy, they do have these. They have the freedom to choose what kind of goals that they want to achieve through your treatment, and also are those goals going to help them promote their well-being? So the other thing is we have to engage in continuous supervision and consultation as therapists, even when you become fully licensed. And this might be different from somebody who is in Kenya, but in the US, you cannot stop being consulting from other seniors, people who have experience. Even when you become fully licensed, you have to consult, because most of the times you really have complicated issues, and we are not know-it-all human beings. So most of the times is when you're calling your supervisor and say, hey, I have a complicated case, and I want to make sure that I'm helping my client, at the same time respecting their freedom and making sure that they're not just coming for treatment, they are making progress, if that makes sense. So we recognize when we cannot help the clients, and we actually give them the freedom to choose to go to another counselor. We give them different referrals, we give them different resources, and they have the freedom to choose. We don't send them to somebody because so and so is my friend. I cannot deal with this issue. I cannot deal with this mental health issue. I want to refer them to my friend because they're my best friend and I want them to have a client. No, 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 no. We have to make sure that we recognize when referral is being done, it's for the best interest of the client and not the best interest of me as the therapist. Okay? So if autonomy is the client's right to choose, then beneficence is our duty to help them make sure that they make the right decision. Okay? So then non-maleficence, and I'm trying to teach you these things because you don't know how they're gonna appear in the test. Okay? So just make sure that you understand non-maleficence. If you want to remember, it is about just maintaining the authority to make sure that you protect your client from harm, avoid harm to the client. You be authentic, you have grounded therapeutic engagement, evidence-based therapeutic plan or treatment plans, so that you don't cause more harm. And this is something that I really worry about for people who go for counseling for a few months or a few courses, and they say, oh, I'm a counselor now, I can start my practice. But by the end of the day, if you don't have the proper training, you're going to harm a client no matter what, because you do not have the training, you don't have the experience, you don't have the authority, even the academic authority to be able to diagnose our mental health issues or even treat people properly because you haven't gone to school. So we want to make sure that you avoid harm. This principle is not explicit, but it is very, very important in the ACA Code of Ethics. It aligns strongly with the codes that are expected around our professional boundaries. Counselors have to be self-aware and they have to be non-exploitative. So this one covers a whole lot of things. We have to remain grounded. Again, we have to be authentic and we have to be emotionally regulated in the room. So when the client come, I'm not going to cause them more anxiety, more fear. I'm not going to be threatening them. I'm not going to be telling them, you're dumb, you don't know what you're doing and things like that. I have to make sure that I regulate myself, and that makes me provide them a very, very safe environment for them to heal and for them to express their emotions. So we have to avoid becoming shaped or pressured by their expectations or manipulation, because you might have a client that may come and manipulate you or just give you their stress so that you become, you compromise to maybe their situation. You have to remain the professional person in the room. So maintaining clinical judgment rather than, just collapsing into I want to rescue, over identifying. And every time a client says something, oh, I've gone through that. That is not allowed because that would be, something that you call transference. So we cannot mix too much disclosure to where we actually even hurt the client because we have gone through tougher times and they are trying to explain to us that they lost a spouse, and then all of a sudden, as a therapist or as a counselor, you say, oh, I lost I lost my spouse too, and it really hurts. That is not how we address issues in the therapy room. We have to make sure that we are allowing the client to express themselves without giving too much disclosure, because we are actually going to cause them more harm when you're trying to offload, our burdens on them. So make sure that we uphold boundaries and protect both me and my client. I will not take advantage of the client because that is what the Code of Ethics do. I don't want to go into details, but there are so many things that, we can do to exploit the client, like expecting gifts, like, asking them to bring, maybe if you know that your client sells tea, and you're like, oh, bring me a bag next week, or bring me whatever next week when you come, or a tray of eggs because you're an egg farmer. We don't do that. We don't exploit our clients. We accept gifts, but the gifts have to be limited. I know for me in Oklahoma, I can only receive not more than $100 gift worth of $100 from a client in any particular time that we have a therapeutic relationship. We cannot have a relationship with a client, a romantic relationship with a client for life who has been my client, or someone that, I know that their family member was my client and things like that. There's so much that really is in there, Code of Ethics that we can talk about the whole year, but I want to just summarize that we don't take advantage. We do not have romantic relationships with our clients because that will be exploited. That will be harming them. So this presence ensures that counselors act in a very stable therapeutic container, not someone who shifts according to emotional pressures or relational pull. If somebody say, I want to have a relationship with you, you're going to have to make those boundaries. And sometimes you might have to transfer that client to another, refer that client outside if they become, they insist on disrespecting your boundaries, and you have to remain firm. That's what professional, counseling practice is all about. So the other thing is justice, show fairness and equality. So the justice, ensuring fairness and equity, how does that look like? So having established autonomy, beneficence, and a regulated professional presence, we turn to justice. So justice requires equitable access, making sure that we are very consistent in our treatment, and also we avoid bias. We have to avoid bias. So we're not going to treat people based on we prefer them because they're from my tribe, I prefer them because they are my age mate, I prefer them because they are this religion and things like that, or they're my color and race, status or things like that. We have to avoid biases. So in alignment with the ACA Code of Ethics, justice really requires that counselors have to provide equal quality of care regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of their religion, and even other identities. And that it really includes sexual identity and even things like that, political. Monitor personal biases and systemic barriers. I always tell my clients, my trainees or my students, that one time when I was being taught about boundaries and biases by one of my professors, I don't remember whether I was in undergraduate or my graduate school, but this particular lady that was teaching us about boundaries and biases, and one day she brought a full basket of stuff and she left them at the door, and those biases were actually labeled in different containers. And she said, you know what, when I come to the therapy room, I drop my bag of biases, I drop my basket of biases right outside the door, and when I get in the door and shut that door, all my biases are left out there in the basket because they cannot influence me how I treat my clients. So making sure that we are not biased. You monitor personal biases, especially where there are systemic barriers. Things like I can talk to so and so because they don't belong to my clan. I can talk to so and so because you don't belong to the same political party. Those are some of their biases. And even like in this era, we have a lot of biases, and I don't want to talk about all of them, but you can guess how many biases there are out there right now. We have a lot of biases that really, you can see them on social media when people comment on somebody's post. A lot of biases. So those are the things that we don't do. We don't carry them into practice, into therapy room. Advocate for equitable treatment within institutions and communities. If you have clients who come and say, oh, we're lacking this in our maybe in our community health department, or those people that have dispensaries, or those people who have public or government hospitals and things like that, and help them and encourage them to advocate for themselves. So use fair procedures in assessment, even when you're making diagnosis and documentation. We're not going to be saying things that are biased. We always make sure that we are kind of like we're very objective instead of being subjective. So I might say when I'm doing my documentation and I'm going to be writing things that I think the client was saying, instead of saying things that the client was saying, I write the things that I think they were saying. And that's why sometimes we do have to use direct quotes when you're documenting. It's very important. So justice ensures that no client's opportunities or dignity are diminished by prejudice or systemic inequality. If that makes sense. Okay. So we treat everybody fairly, we treat everybody, and we give them the best treatment, we give them the best coping mechanisms, we give them the best respect when they come to us, just like we would want them to give us without them looking at am I male or female, or am I tall or short. I give them because they're human beings and they're in front of me, and everybody is treated equally. Okay. So the final one is not the final one. Number 5 is fidelity. So fidelity is talking about upholding trust and confidentiality. Fidelity. You cannot forget that. Even in a test, you cannot forget the word fidelity and what it stands for. So that is talking about maintaining trust and upholding commitments, as well as, I'm committed to make sure that your information is confidential. I'm not going to be talking to other people, even my office mates, even my supervisor is not supposed to know information that is confidential about my client. Even when I consult, I don't talk about names. And this is something that we have to really, really teach ourselves. And because I've seen in places where in government hospitals or even in, just people talk about other people's business, especially when it comes to treatment. And counseling is one of the major practices that we have to be very careful with people's information, because people trust us with a lot of information. You sit with a client for an hour, them giving you their personal information, you're supposed to really uphold that trust. So once clients know they're treated fairly, and they must be also be made to trust us, fidelity is a cornerstone of that therapeutic alliance. So they know that you are giving them the freedom. They know that you're not causing harm. They know that you are there for them, for their best interest. They will trust you, and they will trust you with their lives. So anything that you do to harm them, they trust you. They won't know that you're harming them. So keeping promises and following through on commitments. We have to be able to being reliable, and we have to be consistent when we schedule. We have to document our client's progress. We have to document the information and make sure that that information is also kept securely, and we have to continue communicating with them. Safeguarding confidentiality with make sure that we have clear explanations of the limits when we cannot promise confidentiality. For example, we talk about, your information is confidential until you threaten that you're going to harm someone or going to harm someone else. So we have to protect. Respecting the therapeutic relationship even during transitions, breaks, or termination. So even if the client leaves, even if the client insults us, we cannot share the information. We can't start insulting them on social media. Oh, you refused with my money, you came to counseling and you didn't pay me. Oh, that's a no-no. That is a no-no. So when fidelity is strong, clients feel very secure, and they feel very secure enough to engage deeply in the treatment process, and they will not hold anything back, because you don't want them to hold anything back when they come for treatment. You want them to express how they feel. You want them to talk about the things that are preventing them from progressing, or the things that are affecting their mental health, so that you can be able to help them. If they hold back, then that treatment plan or that therapeutic relationship is not going to be productive. Okay, so the final one is veracity. So being truthful and transparent. Veracity. We have to be truthful and transparent to our clients. We have to practice the truthfulness and also being transparent. So we close these principles with veracity and truthfulness, because the ethical trajectory culminates here. Counselors must be honest, not just because of its morality or moral right, but because the therapeutic process cannot flourish in deception or ambiguity. So veracity is going to require that you communicate clearly, we are honest, and we are also respecting our clients. We have to respect our clients. We cannot be insulting our clients. We cannot not use language that is negative. We cannot demean them. That is where veracity really comes in. So we avoid misrepresentation of our credentials. We cannot say that we are trained. We cannot say that we are licensed if we are not. And that's why I have to disclose my status that I'm a candidate. That is very, very important. Here in America, you can actually be fined a lot of money for misrepresenting your credentials. So you cannot say that you are this when you're not this. So when you're providing the services, you have to make sure that your client I have to tell my clients that I'm under supervision. I have to disclose that information, and I have to use that information. I have to use a C at the end of my credentials so that they also understand, and I have to tell them what that C means. If I don't spell it out, candidate, you have to explain to them what that means. So we have to admit when we make mistakes and take corrective action. If I make a mistake, if I tell a client something that I know it is wrong, and then I remember that I told them something wrong, I will have to correct it. I will have to admit that I made a mistake, and I make sure that I correct it. I cannot treat a client wrongly and then I just assume that that is going to fix itself. I want to make sure that when they come back next time, either I send them an email and correct that information, because sometimes we're humans, we make errors and we make mistakes. We have to own them. So we have to provide accurate information, especially during the informed consent. That's why we have to provide very, very accurate information. Some of the accurate information involves payment. Your client might come to the office because they're in a crisis. You might not even remember to tell them how much money they are going to pay at the end of the day. You need to make sure that that is at their assessment in the beginning. Before they commit, you have told them how much money you charge per session. Before you start the treatment, don't treat them and start fighting over money, because if they can't afford it, they cannot afford it. So when you're doing the treatment plan, tell them how long that is going to take. Tell them how you document. Tell them if I am under supervision. That's why I become very honest. I'm truthful. I'm transparent. But there are some times that I don't know what I'm doing. I have to consult with my supervisor. There are some times that I might be challenged, but I might have a supervisor observing me when I'm doing therapy. So veracity really brings about stabilization, so to your role and also your client, and helps to reinforce the trust that you have built through fidelity, if that makes sense. So when these principles are understood as an integrated sequence, they create coherent ethical posture. First forward autonomy honors the client's rights to choose. Beneficence guides us to promote their well-being. Non-maleficence ensures that we remain grounded and trustworthy in the process. Justice upholds fairness and equity. Fidelity strengthens the therapeutic alliance through reliability, and veracity ensures transparency and integrity. You cannot forget that. So together they form this ethical backbone that really guides people, makes you competent, you're compassionate counselor or therapist. And this is not just for Americans, this is for anybody. So I'm teaching you using the Code of Ethics that really they have to be followed in America, but these are core ethics that have principles that have to be used all over the world if you want to become a professional counselor or occupational therapist or whatever. This can be used by anybody. So yeah. All right, so the other thing that I'm gonna go over through this one is called SOLAR, and SOLAR is just an acronym where S stands for sitting, and this is all about arrangement and proximity in the therapy room or in the counseling room or even in any treatment room. So S stands for sit squarely facing the client and making sure that you observe the chair placement and distance between therapist and client are not too far away from each other. And I know that some of these things you're going to recognize them at the office where I'm going to send you for the scavenger hunt. So making sure that you ask yourselves questions like, is sitting balanced? Is it equal height? Is your client, are you looking like you're on top of your client because you're sitting on a very high chair and your client is sitting on a baby chair? And you don't feel, I mean, do you feel like you're intimidating your client, or is your client intimidating you? Is there respectful personal space? These are very, very important. So SOLAR, S stands for sitting. Don't forget that. All right. So the other, okay, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think I had duplicated one of the slides so many times. So we are going to talk about open posture, which is O stands in SOLAR. O stands for open posture. When you're talking to your client, do you keep your arms or legs closed? You keep them open and crossed to avoid defensive or closed off signals. So imagine yourself sitting with your client and your hands are closed. Your hands are crossed. This is what they're talking about, and this is really these are rules that are actually in the I want to say in the Kenyan Counseling Association Code of Ethics. So they, this, and again, crossing arms or crossing legs can also be cultural. So just make sure that these ones are not written on stone. So we want to make sure that our shoulders are relaxed and our chest open. We avoid fidgeting or using our phones when you're talking to our clients, or maybe having items that block our body so that our clients are not seeing us, like being behind a very tall desk shows the client you are emotionally open and non-threatening. So because the client needs to see that you're not holding a knife, no, I'm kidding, that you're not using your phone and reading a book while you're talking to them, or drinking coffee. If you have to drink something when you're talking to your clients, I hope you also provide them with something to drink. If they're not drinking, do not drink. So you're open. Supports this obviously supports ethical principles of justice, fairness, and autonomy, as you're talking about respecting their space. Okay. So NL stands for forward slightly, lean forward slightly. So when you're talking to the client, sometimes you have to lean slightly forward. Never too close. Make sure that you're avoiding that distance. And I usually tell people now you can use is it the 3 feet distance or covered distance? Signals that you are attentive without invading personal space. Um, and this is something that this is something that should be common sense, that you don't want to look like you know you are really really in somebody's personal, you're invading personal space. People feel intimidated or threatened, and these are things that happen commonly in people that are not following the ethical code of ethics. You will see people that want to, you know your shoulders touching or your knees touching. That is not allowed in therapy room. um, so this leaning forward is going to strengthen rapport and increase client comfort. Sometimes we lean forward to show that we are listening. Sometimes we lean forward to show empathy. Enhances the counselor's ability to catch subtle emotional cues. So also connects with the ethical principle of beneficence, promoting client well-being. I don't know how much I can stress on this. When it comes to leaning forward, you have to be very, very careful. What I'm talking about, you have to be extremely careful. because also leaning forward can also send other messages that are, that wouldn't be taken lightly by somebody else, or somebody might misinterpret your leaning forward. Just okay. So the E stands for eye contact. You have to maintain gentle, cultural appropriate eye contact, and this is something else that is also very cultural. In America, you have to, have eye contact. I know in some African cultures that, eye contact means disrespect. In America, eye contact means if you don't give somebody eye contact, they think you're lying. In Kenya, I think when you're giving eye contact to some people, they might think that you're disrespecting them. And I don't know if that is still a cultural thing, but that's what I know. That, that's why people say that you're shy, you're looking down, just because how people have been sensitized. So avoiding staring or intense gazes is something that is obviously you cannot do. You have to make sure that you're not staring at your client or giving them very intensive gaze that makes them feel intimidated or threatened. So also looking, sometimes you look away briefly at natural moments to reduce pressure on the client. So if you're talking to the client, instead of looking at them like, intensively and also gazing at them, and they will feel discomfort, so you can look away. You can pretend to pick something, or something like that. Just look away so that they don't feel the pressure that you're looking at them. Eye contact helps track emotions and cognitive responses, and also encourages veracity, honesty, fidelity, trust, and therapeutic presence. So you see how I tied this together with ACA. Okay, so R stands for relax. Keep your body relaxed, your shoulders down, and breathing steady. So, even if your client is going through like an anxiety attack, you have to also make sure that you relax. You don't breathe like you're out of breath just because you had something that is very heavy coming out of the client. You have to also just relax. Take a deep breath if you have to, but you don't have to take a deep breath to show the client like, oh my gosh, how did you overcome that, and things like that. You don't scare your clients. A relaxed counselor reduces client anxiety. Avoid rushing or tapping or tension in the hand, or feet. You have to signal, when you are relaxed, you really signal confidence and professionalism and emotional containment. I'm talking about people who, maybe you're an occupational therapist and you go into a room and you find a client that is very, very sick. How do you stay relaxed? How do you stay confident? How do you contain your emotions and at the same time remain professional? This is what you're talking about. You have to look for ways that make you relax. What makes me relax is really just taking a deep breath. I can take a deep breath in and out without my client knowing that I'm doing it, because I'm just taking it and nobody knows that I'm doing it. I'm just, quietly taking it. So you can figure out what you need to do, so long as you are really staying professional. So also this relaxing or R supports the non-maleficence by preventing harm through therapist tension or pressure. Okay, so now that you have listened to the ACA Code of Ethics and you have also listened to the SOLAR, this is where the project comes in. Okay, so I'm sending you out in the field and you're going to be doing a practical, and this one has a lot of points. So it's going to take about 50 points to do this video recording. And this is how you're going to do it. You're going to form groups of 2, so 2 students, and only 3 groups may visit this clinic called Ponker Health Clinic per day. So you're going to come up with a schedule, and your class rep is going to do that schedule and send it to me, and I'm going to forward it to the person that is in the office. This Ponker Health clinic is actually right down there at, I'm gonna send the directions or the pin for you. So each group must book an appointment in advance for an office use slot, and this time around we're going to charge a very small fee, and this fee is really to cover the utilities at the office, make sure that your time is slotted, because otherwise that time would have been a client's time, so that you can be able to go and practice at that office as if you're a client and as if you're a therapist. This is going to be one of the best things you're going to learn from this, because I would rather you do a practical than just learn theory and practice the things that we have just learned um, in this lecture in the beginning, and also the other lectures that you have been listening to. So you're allowed to stay at the office for a maximum of 45 minutes doing your recording. And the things that you're going to do and how you're going to do that is by making sure that you book your appointment, and only 3 groups of 2 people can go in a day, because you don't want to take the rest of the day for other clients that come to that office, because it's really a clinic where we treat people. Okay. If you have any questions, I know your class rep is going to communicate with me, and I'm going to also communicate, especially about the fee. It's a really small fee that we have started charging, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do this practical without the office. You can do it somewhere else, but it is better if you use it at the office, so that you can have that clinical experience. Okay, so the project overview. So this project will evaluate your understanding and application of the ACA, or the ethical codes from the American Code of Ethics. And I'm going to provide the link where you can find the whole ethics, the principles at the end of this lecture, so that you can be able to learn and practice to use them in real counseling setting. So the person that works at the office is obviously going to help in grading, not just taking your time slot, is also going to help in grading. So you have to also be very professional, including how you dress up when you go to do your video. And when I watch the video, I'm gonna be able to know whether you really are doing some of the things you're talking. The SOLAR, the ACA Code of Ethics. Are you going to really portray that you are a professional counselor? So professional communication and conduct during mock sessions. You have to communicate as a professional, not like your bestie friend, talk, hey, how are you, Sasa? You have to speak professionally. Observation, analytical reporting skills. You have to demonstrate those. You have to demonstrate creativity and preparedness and ability to work collaboratively. So this is the reason why you're doing as a group. So how do you work as a group? Because by the end of the day, that's how you're going to go ahead and write a report after that. But let's finish the video part, okay? So the instructions are: do not come to practice at the office. Come ready to record, okay? So we are now going to be practicing how to do the counseling session, or the mock. It's called a mock at the office. You will have practiced before, and you're just coming there to record. So the skills, so that it will be like you prepared, okay? So come ready to record, because you only have 45 minutes at the office. So you're going to record a 15-minute counseling session video, and you have to switch role. The student has to be, you can decide how you want it. So each student has to be a counselor and has to be a client at the same time. So you are going to really see whether you're going to divide those minutes into half, so that you do the counseling and the other person does the client, and vice versa. But 15 minutes is all that your video needs to cover. But the reason why you're there for 45 minutes is because if you have to record, if you make a mistake and record, by the time you adjust yourself, so you do have a leeway of maybe 30 minutes, but I want you to know that you only have 45 minutes there. So if you redo and redo it, you might record it twice, and maybe go and choose whichever one you prefer, but that video is going to be needed. Your video should reflect ethical professionalism in appearance, tone, and interaction. So demonstrate the core ethical principles in counseling, how you have learned them from the time you started watching my lectures, okay? Um, so this is the paper part. So the paper instructions. You're going to integrate the concepts from my lecture videos, including this one, the Code of Ethics and SOLAR. When writing your paper, you have to demonstrate the awareness of ethical practices using what we have just learned today and what we have learned in the, previously. So here are the elements of your paper and what your paper is going to capture. So when you go to the office the first time, I want you to pay attention to this space, okay? Because now we're talking about the environmental space, the environmental piece of how a counseling or therapy room should look like. So you're going to describe the look and the feel of the waiting area, okay? You're going to note the colors that have been used. Is there music? Is there comfort for the client? How about the layout? Is the space so calming? Is it stress reducing? I wish you guys came to my previous office, but I am glad that this office is there for you to learn, because if you ever set up your own practice or your own clinic, you want to know what to look for. It's not just an office with a desk and a chair looking like you're going to a classroom. This is what I want you to note. It's not the best office, but at least I have made some space that makes the client feel safe and inviting, if that makes sense. So these are the things that I want you to do. So the paper part also it carries 20 points, okay? So the video is 50 points and the paper part is 20 points. So that gives you 70 points. So what you're left with, how many points for your exam? 30 points. Are we together? So describe the look and the feel of the waiting area. Note the colors, music, comfort, and layouts. Is this space welcoming? Is it stress reducing, or is it increasing the stress of a client? So I want you to put all that in your paper. So the other parts of the observation of the office is what you're going to do is the confidentiality and privacy. These are the things that we talked about in the SOLAR and also in the ACA. Check for soundproofing, or do we have a quiet room for the client where that we are protecting the information and making sure that they're private and they're confidential. And also find out how we do our recording. How do we keep our records? Do we secure them? Do we lock them? Is the information that is encrypted to where that nobody can just come into the office and start collecting clients' information? Are conversations kept private at the therapy room or at the counseling center? So those are the things that you observe with your own eyes. I would really, really encourage you to provide photos to describe the information that I'm asking for in the paper, so that you can include them in the paper and explain what that particular photo stands for, as in terms of what I'm asking for you to cover in your paper, if that makes sense. And please, if I'm not clear, you can ask your class rep to ask me, okay? So the room lighting, colors, we've already talked about colors and comfort. What colors are used on the walls and furniture? Is the lighting soft? Is it harsh for the client? Is the room cozy? Is it calm? That includes the therapy room, includes the waiting area and all things like that, okay? So make sure that you observe those particular features, okay? Accessibility, and I'm gonna say that our place is not very, very accessible with a wheelchair, but you can access if you're using a wheelchair. We might not have a ramp, but I think we have made it in a way that if you had a wheelchair, it would be very easy to do that. But I want you to observe and describe it. Maybe there's something you're gonna say in the paper that would make me improve on it. But remember, most of the times when you're renting space, it's not the same as when you build a space. So sometimes you are limited, but see whether there's, you can access the office, okay? The therapy room. Accessibility features, are there signs? Is there a wide door and accessible bathroom? Do clients know where they can? Have you put enough signs, whether for somebody who is blind or somebody who can see? I mean, who can, who does not see far? Maybe there are pictures that show that this is a bathroom and things like that. Are there hazardous materials that can be found that could be hazardous for children or even people with disabilities? Can clients with disabilities navigate the office? So those are the things that you'll be looking for when it comes to accessibility features, and anything else that you might think. What else is making this office accessible? Okay. So the other thing is inclusivity and cultural sensitivity. So you just look around and tell me, are there office materials in the language that is well understood by all cultures? Do posters or signs show any type of discrimination, whether it's age, gender discrimination, or just do we include everybody? Yeah, let me know in your paper. Okay. So the other thing is staff behavior and dress code. Did you find the staff in the office properly dressed or professionally dressed? Are they respectful and warm to the clients? Are client names or information shared discreetly? Did you see any files that are not closed, laying somewhere? And this is actually, it's supposed to be in confidentiality, but this don't worry, all this information is very important. So informed consent process, I would like you to know, to ask in the office if how do staff explain therapy and confidentiality to client. Are there clear forms of verbal explanations for the clients? Do you have anything on the wall that says that is the client understanding and confirmed? Okay, because the client have to understand the informed consent, and you might want to ask for a copy of the informed consent from my office and have it so that you can describe it. Okay, so this is the reflection paper, and it is worth 20 points. Write a paper about what you observed, what felt ethical, what felt unethical, professional, or concerning. What would you change if that was your office? What would you change if you were the therapist that works in that office, or if you were to be given that office, or if you were to start your own office? What would you change? Submit your written project by the given timeline. So this paper is being done by the two people that did a video. So you're not going to have to form another group. This is the same group of the video and the same group of the paper. Does that make sense? So your partner, the one you did with the group work, the video is the same partner that you're gonna submit the paper with. Make sure that your information is clear when you submit your video. I will provide that email for the videos to be provided, because I don't want people sending videos like a day after, today after you watch this lecture. I want you to make sure that you all submit that by the time they are done. I'll give you probably a week to submit them, and I'll obviously give a deadline. I was waiting from your class rep to see when you're doing the exam so that I can know where to place these assessments and due date. Just because we are disrupted by the strike doesn't mean that we are not going to cover what we are supposed to cover. Okay, I'm supposed to have a guest lecturer next week, I believe. I think the 4th, that we are going to agree on time on that, because I would like that class to be present, to be live on Zoom or Google Meet, based on what the lecturer decides. Okay, so I said I was gonna provide a resource, and this is the resource. You can actually just Google counseling.org. It's still supposed to be ACA, and I believe that might not take you to the ACA Code of Ethics per se. I don't know where I got this link from, but if you don't get it, just Google ACA Code of Ethics. ACA, American Code of Ethics. on your Google, and you should get it on there. I believe if it's not the version of 2014, there might be the latest one, maybe with amendments or something like that. So I want to wish you all the best in your projects. I want to wish you all the best in your video. I want to wish you all the best in your paper. I want to wish you ahead of time the best for your exam. So your exam will be carrying very, small amount of points, but it is also very important to just test some of the work that you have gone over. If you listen to the videos, there is nothing that is going to be examined outside what I have taught. But we should have 2 or more lectures, or 2 to 3 lectures more before you do exam. So just make sure that you write your notes when you listen to the video. That's how I teach this class, because I'm far away. But the people that I have gone through my class, they have been happy about it. And I hope that you will become the best provider, the best therapist, the best occupational therapist, the best nurse, the best whatever you want to become, because you went through this class. Other than wishing you the best, I don't know. I'm sorry that your time was wasted, but I hope your graduation is not delayed because of the strike. Anyway, that's part of life. So have a good night or good day. That's the end of this lecture.